Now, violent anti-ICE rioters wreaking havoc in LA, lighting countless vehicles on fire as they rebelled against federal immigration raids and attacked police officers and federal agents. You can see here on this exclusive video provided to Fox, rioters are chucking large rocks at incoming federal vehicles, putting their lives in danger, shattering glass, huge holes in the windshields. And the violence only got worse from there. Rioters were lighting fireworks and aiming them directly at law enforcement officers. And the optics are astounding. Here are rioters waving the Mexican flag high in the air while parading the flame-ridden, smoke-filled street. And as they wave these Mexican flags in the air, rioters were also burning the American flag.
Burn it down! Burn it down! Burn it down! We're not afraid of you!
But on cue, the left is referring to the events as peaceful.
The vast majority of protesters there have been peaceful.
We see peaceful protests launching in Los Angeles.
We're seeing these mass raids happening in areas that are peaceful.
It started peacefully. People were there to protest. They're there to protest the mass deportations that are happening. And so it was peaceful.
Now the Trump administration is vowing to put an end to the chaos. DHS posting these photos and saying, quote, "Order will be restored." And President Trump is warning that the U.S. won't take it.
When they spit at people, you know, they spit. That's their new thing. They spit, and worse, you know what they throw at them, right? And when that happens, I have a little statement. They say, they spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military, which they do as a common thing. They get up to them this far away, and then they start spitting in their face. That happens, they get hit very hard.
But Governor Gavin Newsom is vowing to fight back, calling on border czar Tom Homan to go ahead, arrest him.
Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy. You know, I don't give a damn. But I care about my community. I care about this community. The hell are they doing? These guys need to grow up. They need to stop. And we need to push back. And I'm sorry to be so clear, but that kind of bloviating is exhausting. So, Tom, arrest me. Let's go.
Yeah, bloviating is exhausting, Governor. Well, border czar Homan responded this morning on Fox and Friends that if Newsom breaks the law, he just might.
Then the reporter asked me, well, could Governor Newsom or Mayor Bass be arrested? I said, well, no one's above the law. If they cross the line and commit a crime, absolutely they can. So there was no discussion about arresting Newsom. And so, you know, what he's done, he's failed that state. He waited 2 days of that city burning and people getting hurt, officers being assaulted before he made any declaration of an unlawful assembly. He's late to the game.
Guy, there's so much to unpack here, but it can become relatively simple when, as Tom Homan says, so essentially California communities were strengthened. They were weaned of violent illegal criminals, and then certain communities started fighting back violently. The police there, the LAPD, per the chief, became overwhelmed. And when Trump stepped in to help, apparently the governor says, we're going to sue you, and all of a sudden is on the side of, I guess, take your pick, illegal rapists, violent rioters. What's next?
So we were covering this live on the Big Weekend show last night, watching these pictures, these aerial images that were disgusting to watch. And it was breathtaking, frankly, to see virtually every Democrat in the country come out and say, this is mostly peaceful or just straight up peaceful. And the rioting is the fault of Donald Trump and ICE. It is so insulting. And you mentioned the fact that they were burning American flags while waving foreign flags. I've seen some people on the left on social media sort of tepidly saying, you know, that isn't helpful. That's not a great look or optics. We shouldn't really be doing it that way. No, I think they should exactly do it that way because it's honest. The people who are burning things, the people who are burning our flag, the people who are assaulting our federal officers, that is exactly the look that they're going for because it's what they believe. This is not a PR problem for them. It is a problem for the United States of America. And if the Democrats think that they're going to win this dispute and this debate by blaming all of this on Donald Trump or federal law enforcement, I think that they are deeply deluded.
And they're still cowards at the heart because they're still wearing masks while they do all of it, while they ride motorcycles and injure police officers, Kaylee, while they are violent and don't have the heart to say, well, yeah, I do speak the truth and here's my face behind it. I also note, Kaylee, that, of course, the vice president weighing in, calling this also peaceful. This statement here. I am appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city. But guys, not appalled by the violence. Wait for what she's appalled for. She's appalled by the deploying of the National Guard, which is a dangerous escalation meant to promote chaos. This administration's actions are not about public safety, she says. They're about stoking fear of a community demanding dignity and due process. But Kaylee, I want to juxtapose this statement with exactly who, for example, were arrested in the ICE raids. Charges included murder in the second degree. It included rape. We'll pop it up there on the screen in a moment. We'll have it so that the viewers can see exactly the kind of people that were removed. So again, whose side thus is the vice president, is the governor on, right? Again, the LAPD chief said, we are overwhelmed. And I venture that the communities before that were overwhelmed by violent illegals like that.
Kamala Harris's statement puts her on the side of lawlessness, a very comfortable place for the left. Tim Walz is there, Gavin Newsom is there, Karen Bass is there. Karen Bass, I watched her last night say live that the violence from a few, it's only been few, short of a few people, and there's nothing unusual about that. It should be unusual to have violence in this country. That is not something that we tolerate. I was press secretary during the so-called Summer of Love of 2020. During the Summer of Love, 2 people were killed in the CHOP zone, the lawless zone in Seattle. In the Summer of Love, David Dorn, a police officer, was killed. In the Summer of Love, you had officers who were being barricaded into courthouses as they were lit on fire in Portland. I had many conversations with President Trump about his use of the National Guard, and it was very clear to me what his philosophy was. He wants the states to take the lead. That's the 10th Amendment. They have the police power. When they don't take the lead, he will use the National Guard. He did that with St. John's Church when it was burning to the ground. If necessary, he is not afraid to pull in the military. He has the right to do that under the Insurrection Act. But here's what he won't do. When Tim Walz was leading in Minnesota, May 27th, the police chief in Minnesota back in 2020 said, we need the National Guard. Here's what Tim Walz did. He did it on a limited basis to protect state property, the State House. Guess what happened the night of the 28th? The 3rd precinct, police precinct in Minnesota was burnt to the ground. That is the consequence of not acting. So President Trump has learned from Tim Walz in the left. He's not going to let Gavin Newsom allow an hour to pass where we might lose the life of someone in the CHOP zone or like David Dorn or a building's going to burn to the ground. He will take action.
You know what yesterday was, Kaylee? Yesterday was the exact anniversary of Seattle's East Precinct. That was taken over and held for 23 days because that's what happens when you don't respond with an in-kind reaction to stamp it out.
Bingo.
Kaylee McEnany mentioned tolerance, right? What we tolerate. And Paul Marlucki had an incredible tweet earlier sort of talking exactly about that, saying, well, essentially, is this a theoretical debate over what we are willing to tolerate, what our baseline is? And as a nation, our baseline should be a zero tolerance for burning cop cars and rioting, violently taking over freeways. This image is horrifying. So he posits that. So any argument over whether or not we should have the National Guard in there, of course it's political. And you will never be on the right side as long as you support President Trump, even though the community is what is burning now.
And it is astounding, to Guy's point, that the Democratic Party can't rally behind the very simple message of condemning vandalism, violence against law enforcement, and just chaos in Los Angeles' streets. And, you know, I think it's important to put this within the context of one of the larger legislative debates right now, which is the Big Beautiful Bill, because the Trump administration is citing the Big Beautiful Bill as exactly why we need that legislation. It's because of this. And, you know, I was watching those videos last night of bricks being thrown at the driver's windows of our law enforcement officers as they passed by. And I couldn't help but think to myself, you know what? I think we have bigger problems as a country than spending cuts. I think that we have bigger problems than the deficit. When you have thousands of people out in the streets questioning the very idea of our nation's sovereignty and whether we are allowed to enforce the rule of law, we need that bill. We need to deport these people, and we need to restore order.
Yeah, and I'm from California, and I remember the horrific Watts riots, the violence playing out on live television, that those streets had devolved into complete anarchy and a complete assault on police officers, on anyone. And here we have the opportunity, per Trump, to actually stop it now. But it looks like the left and those political office holders, including Maxine Waters, that said, I hope those crowds get bigger. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's incitement.
Well, but we've already seen that from her, because after the killing of George Floyd, I mean, she was famous for being, on the stump and saying, get up in their faces. I mean, we didn't think that meant give them a kiss on the cheek. No. But I was curious today, and I asked former Secretary of State Pompeo about this. I asked Steve Hilton about it. Why the Mexican flag? And so, look, reportedly, the Mexican president now has said that she condemns and rebukes all the violence, even though she says even no matter what they're doing, they're not criminals. That's what she's speaking out about the protests in our country. Previously, it's being reported that, quote, if necessary, we will mobilize. We don't want taxes on remittance from our fellow countrymen from the U.S. to Mexico. I mean, I can't make heads or tails of where she stands, but she must see her flag. She must see Mexico. I mean, is this a situation now that's bigger than even us? And have we morphed into a national security situation? I would think that we would have, with now the thought that we have Marines standing by if this continues to go south. We need to take a pause here. It's not going to come from Democratic leadership. It will come from President Trump.
And we welcome that. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.